If you experience the clunking noise in the rear suspension on your Chrysler Concorde LHS 300M, it's usually this bushing here. It's pretty worn out. It has a really big play. The problem here is not this rear bolt, but the front bolt, which is here. All you will see is the bolt in two pieces. When you loosen it up, you will strip it. There's no way you can loosen up this bolt. See how it's rusty? It's terrible. It's M10 bolt, and the second part is your bolt head right here. So in order to replace that, you have to do something homemade, because they are not selling this bolt and they are not selling the nut actually, and I'll show you on the bench how it actually looks like over there. When you strip the head bolt or the bolt head, the rest of it will stay in here in this closed area. So what I did, I just pry it off. I put my flathead screwdriver behind the bolt and simply get it out through this opening, but there is no other way how to get it out of that location. So what you're gonna be dealing with is bolt in two pieces. This part is discontinued, so you cannot buy this special U-shaped lock nut. It just looks like this. You slide it onto the chassis here and it holds in that position. You can buy something similar, but it's all about searching online, and I needed to get it done today because the car won't be drivable and I needed to put it on the road next morning. I bought in a local hardware store a couple simple stuff. I bought this nut and the bolt M10. It's grade 8.9 or 8.8, sorry, which is acceptable. I will be happier with a little bit stronger grade, but this is acceptable for the application in my case, I believe. But I suggest to go a little bit maybe stronger. And two washers, same grade, and this big one will be actually supplying the support for originally this nut. So imagine this was like that, right? Like a U shape, and there is a nut holding steady on this top position of this U-shaped flange. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna simulate that. I'm gonna use this big flat washer. I'm gonna make this opening here just exactly for this M10 nut, and I'm gonna bolt it with this JB Weld product. I just had this paste at home, and it's good for bonding the metal. I will cut those sides so I can actually insert it into the chassis, and to make this opening just exactly good for that M10 nut, I'm gonna use this file. I'm gonna make two pieces, or two kind of like a systems for instead of this original bolt, because both sides they broke the same way. I'm gonna mark this nut somewhere in the middle. I'm gonna double check the thread on the other side. If I'm in the middle somewhere, it's centered. To mark the outside. Now I have the mark on this big washer here. Instead I'm gonna use this file. The nut actually sits in the middle of this big washer. I'm gonna use my pliers and I'm gonna bend them over. They will support the nut from the side. So when you insert it in there, the nut will not turn in there, right? Now I'm gonna use a sandpaper to roughen up that surface. Just before I cut that big washer to a size I need to measure the opening here. 31 millimeters. So if the nut is here, I want to be parallel with those two sides, not like that. I don't want to do that. So I want to be parallel with those two sides, and 31 mil will do it. So I cut it off, but the final measurements, it's not 31 because I tried to get into the place underneath the car, and if you go with 29 mil, it will fit just perfectly fine. Okay, I'm under the car. Let's slide it in there. And voila! It's not bad. The nut is in the middle. Now what I have to do is to mark it down with the Sharpie. I'm gonna cut it, show you a little later how, to make sure that there are a few spots or a few points where this homemade system will hold against the chassis and not move anywhere more forward. Yeah, it's not the nicest cut ever, but I made this hook a little bit here so it will hold in place and not allowing to move it back and forth, but also up and down. And then I bend the end as well. I just need to cut this little piece off and then it should be good to go. Now it's time to apply the paste. You have to mix it up thoroughly so it's nice and uniform. Not a pro. That should do it. It should do it. So one more like that. Just want to show you the difference between the old one on the right and the new one on the left. It's quite visible, isn't it? So it was clunking all the time. And just don't forget, if you put the rubber on, this is on the top. Okay? So the opening goes to the front. That's how I removed the old one. There is a washer coming underneath the nut. This goes into the chassis. Then goes the washer on those two brackets. And of course this nut, and it's coming with a 17 mil head. Okay, sorry, this is a one-hand operation. I'm on the passenger side, so I'm gonna put my washer in here, my homemade nut flange on top, and I will center it a little bit with my screwdriver here. The rubber goes with this opening to the front. Then you're gonna install these two brackets. This one is bigger and it goes to the chassis directly, and there is a smaller one which goes on the bottom or below that big bracket. You see these holes, this is round and this is oval, and the oval hole goes to the front of the car, same on the big bracket. Just want to mention those brackets on side. On each side are two. Open them up a little bit before you gonna install this lower bracket. It's way less painful, especially under the car where you don't have too much room. Now when those two holes are lined up, I'm gonna try to find a couple threads with my new bolt. So it's holding into place. Now it's time to install this big fella. Just double check the position of the rubber first. Should be centered, like in the middle. I will push on the lower bracket with my thumb and try to catch a couple threads on this long bolt. Yeah, I got it too. This is a 15 mil on the rear, and I changed this bolt, so now it's 17. It's time to tighten it up. I will post the picture with the torque. So once you tighten everything up to the torque, just don't forget to tap these brackets on both sides, rear and front, back into place. So at the very end, I want to share with you the part number I use for replacement those two bushings.